If you are looking to build an enterprise sales team, this video is for you. My name is Justin. I run a sales team. I run a business as well called Localics, and it's a business development agency for geospatial and enterprise technology firms. And we pretty much help build enterprise pipeline for different firms. I found a very interesting topic within the conversations that we're having with clients about how they build their sales teams and how they build their sales departments and how you can scale that. So I figured let's make a video about the few stages that you can go through so that we can really zoom into what it means to be a founder-led salesperson, to then scale up that team to generate demand or step out of the demand generation part of it, scale to the point you can step out of the sales process as a founder or management. Because truthfully, that's the question many people come to us with is, hey, we do have some type of motion based on inbound. We want to scale our solution using outbound. We can generate demand using outbound and partnerships for that matter. So we have a little bit of proof, a little bit of traction in a certain direction, but now we need to figure out how to apply outbound here. So stage one is pretty simple. You are obviously doing founder-led sales, or for that matter, management-led. So kind of assume that that is replaceable in this video. Just going to say founder-led, but I really mean founder/management-led. This is a stage where the founder is the one responsible for pretty much all of the sales process across the entire funnel. In other words, the sales and marketing funnel, the client acquisition funnel for that matter. So we have the top of funnel where we generate attention, which we probably do one of two ways. Either we do outbound or we create content. That's how we generate attention. Those two ways that we have for generating attention, and I mean, there's more like leveraging partnerships, doing stuff with ads, but pretty much the work comes down to these two. Especially in enterprise, these are the most important ones. That's what we need to do. Well, okay, that's a pretty significant task. I would say even just pick one of the two to start out with, or keep both very lean, and that goes for this entire process because, well, you're one person, so you already have a fuck ton to do, right? For lack of better wording, apologies. Middle of funnel, marketing qualified leads. The people that come in for whatever we're doing to generate buzz and generate attention as a founder and or management are going from generating attention to marketing qualified leads. These marketing qualified leads are basically the people that then respond to the content that we make, the outbound that we do. People that are interested in what we have to offer. This is a stage that many people kind of skip or don't really think about in depth. But the moment you have a market where there is a lot of competition, like other people selling the same solution as you in the literal sense, you can also think of competition as an in-house team, or you can think of it in different ways. But let's say there's actual other companies that are competing with you in the sense of it's either you or them selling the same thing. That's what marketing is about. That is what the middle of the funnel in particular is very important for, because this is where you can differentiate yourself from them by having depth in what it is that you do and what your value proposition is compared to theirs. In many ways, there will be overlap. In some cases, you can even argue that maybe your competitor has a better value proposition, but if they don't market that in depth, or they don't really have middle of the funnel content like case studies, blog posts, depth, webinars, technical articles, all of these types of assets, then there's really no reason to not do that, because even if you don't do it perfectly, you already do this so much better than your competition that you differentiate yourself from them, so that when people are getting top of funnel outbound from both you and the competitor, they go to the websites and they see one person with case studies and one without. Simple, then, the deal is already closed, pretty much. So that's also the next stage, is just sales, which probably most founders actually don't really struggle with. And for the most part, to the extent that they do, they know how to fix it. So I'm not going to go too into depth on that part here. But getting people on discovery calls, getting term sheets sent over, getting decks sent over, sending proposals over, getting deals closed, right? Very simple stuff. That's what most people understand. That's most straightforward, really. So let's say you are doing, because the first things that you'll be doing are focusing on, as a founder, bottom of funnel and the top of the funnel. Then you start thinking about putting more effort and allocating more effort into the middle of the funnel. But probably from there, let's say you do have something for each of these stages. So this can be very lean, right? Don't get me wrong. It's not like you need to post 1,000 LinkedIn posts every day, but if you are able to generate, convert attention, and close deals, then you can start thinking about hiring. And so the next stage would be having SDRs and digital marketing. But there is, of course, a little bit of a stage in between, you could argue. So it really depends on where your strengths lie, on where you start hiring first. if you as a founder are closing the deals, the first hire is not going to be a closer because that's too risky, really. It's more important that you can keep the engine running as far as generating and converting attention. So usually what the best step is here is if you really do enjoy and are good at creating content for the middle of the funnel, you hire a DM or a digital marketer first. If you are relatively, sorry, let me rephrase that. I think I said it opposite here. You hire a digital marketer first the moment you are not that good at the middle of the funnel, because they can help you take care of that. You need to do a lot of back and forth with them. You need to teach them a lot, but they can just execute on the work that needs doing. And probably they can even support you at the top of the funnel at that. However, you could also argue if you are good at that part, and that's something that you are very strong in, that it's more efficient to hire an SDR or somebody at least doing cold email for you or just installing a cold email system for you to generate top of funnel attention. So it's really about where do your strengths lie and where are you going to start hiring, but you're going to start hiring here or here and not here. So pretty much one of these two. That is a later stage. The reason that is a later stage is because it just is. You need to close deals as a founder at the bottom of the funnel until you are able to get the entire top and middle and part of the bottom of the funnel delegated, because otherwise you don't know what's going wrong. And this, of course, is where most things can go wrong if you are not involved, is in the sales process. It's the hardest to delegate, and for good reason, because it is the most straightforward, but it is simply the hardest to delegate for the fact that there's a lot of complexity involved with go-to-market. And the concept of go-to-market is something that only a founder can really do well whilst being in the sales process and really listening to people. You started the business for a reason. You saw a gap in the market. That's why you started the business. The sales process is where you get the best data and the best feedback from the market that you can feed back into the top and middle of the funnel. So the moment you get somebody involved with the bottom of the funnel, you can also start breaking the top and middle of the funnel, because this is also the part that communicates to the top and middle of the funnel. Meaning you also start breaking your lead generation if you hire the wrong person here, which is why we start with hiring people for top and middle of funnel. So the next stage is where we do have people for that. So let's say we have both SDRs and digital marketing. So we have taken care of generating and capturing attention, but now we get to a level of more sophistication. What do I mean by more sophistication? I mean that there becomes more sophistication in the sales process. In particular, in the enterprise market, this is important, is we need to think about engaging accounts instead of engaging singular people. So we are engaging organizations and their departments, and we are not just engaging one person, but we are trying to activate and open conversations with an organization. So we're not talking about ICPs here anymore, because it doesn't really matter as much. It's more about all of the stakeholders. That's really what it's about. So we have the procurement side, particularly we have the technical buyer, of course, because we're selling technological solutions, economic buyer, and of course we then need to think about change management almost, because we are selling into accounts. These accounts being a lot of different people with a lot of different values and morals and reasons for why or why not to work with you, that you all need to get involved. If you as a founder can get a deal across the board, probably you only need to really convince one or two people. But if you then need to also take care of lead generation, top of funnel at more scale, this is something for your SDRs to do. Find which accounts are likely to buy and find the right triggers in order to know if they're going to buy, if they have an incentive to buy, and then find all of the decision makers involved with that incentive or with that trigger and reach all of them. Of course, don't reach all of them in the same way, don't reach all of them in the same vicinity or on the same day for that matter, but execute on that account across a relatively short few month time frame, or have your SDRs do that, so that they start opening a conversation with you, because multiple people have seen why this is something that's of interest to them, and you are sure that there's been a good entry point, either with a technical, economic, or procurement IT level buyer. Many reasons for people to buy, many reasons for accounts to buy. If the moment you can open a conversation with one person who's enthusiastic, the rest will kind of follow. So that's really what the most important part is here. It's threading. It's going up and going sideways in the organization to find who is interested in this type of solution that you have to provide. So the middle of the funnel is engaging the rest of that committee. I pretty much covered that by now, but making sure that everyone is on board with the solution and getting alignment. Because what will happen is you engage accounts and you book calls, but you're now not booking calls necessarily at the bottom of the funnel only, but you're also booking calls in the middle of the funnel where they're engaged, but they're not ready to buy. Why are they not ready to buy? Because there are so many stakeholders involved. And of course, you're running an outbound motion and not an inbound motion. So you have leads that are factually slightly less qualified or have slightly less urgency, generally speaking, than people who come in inbound. That's just the truth, but it's still a very important mechanism to speed up the growth of your business because your competition probably is running outbound sales. So that's why this is still important to do. However, we now book in accounts that might be interested. They're still at this stage and they're not really in buying stage until they've engaged more people in the organization. So a great thing to do here, for example, is let's say at the top of the funnel, we've engaged accounts by running a webinar and running outbound toward that webinar. We have 100 accounts that were booked into that webinar and that have seen the recording and or been on the webinar, like we've done for one of our clients, all government related, all government leads actually. So that was really good. That means that there's a lot of potential. Well, what is the next step following up from this webinar or this campaign that we've done? A middle of the funnel. In other words, we need to engage the buying committees. If we need to engage the buying committees, that means we need to engage multiple decision makers, multiple stakeholders, and we need to address all of their concerns and we need to address all of their potential as well. So this is a very strategic and very tedious process in a way, and also a very fun process. Is just keeping the conversation alive and keeping a lot of lines, keeping a lot of threads open with all of these different decision makers, all of the different stakeholders, so that we can get good insights into why or why not they would buy, and to convince the people that are a little bit wary of why they would switch or buy such a solution. This is something that the SDRs, along with digital marketing, can do by sending the right resources over, sending the right content, and also just sending the right messages. This is something that as a founder, you need to give them a lot of input in, and that you need to have a lot of back and forth in, because what will go wrong here, or what can go wrong here, is people open conversations, but they don't get to engage the rest of the committee, because either they are not opening enough new conversations within that same account beyond the first call, or you are not doing that because the discovery call wasn't that good. And so they don't get feedback from the market, and you don't know what to send. And of course, as a founder, you would assume you have more context because you're more senior level, generally speaking, that you need to give to the SDRs and digital marketing. That context they can then use to engage more accounts and engage accounts better. So that's a lot of words to explain something pretty simple, but you get the point. Procurement is then, of course, procurement. It's a little bit more like procurement rather than sales, because the last few stakeholders within the buying committee that you're kind of convincing are obviously not the technical buyer and economic buyer anymore. Those have already been convinced, probably after the first call already, hence why they got the rest of the organization involved. But now you need to convince IT, security, and legal, and maybe slightly more, but like the procurement heavy people. So you kind of just are jumping through hoops and sending over documents at this point, and maybe having some calls, but they're more about that level of sales as opposed to conviction. It's still about conviction, don't get me wrong, it's definitely about conviction, but it's about conviction and trust on a totally different level than if it's just a one-to-one sale to a technical buyer. A technical or economic buyer is somebody you can convince in one or two conversations, but the procurement people, IT and security and legal, they just need to build trust with you for one, but also build trust with you through documents. So they're going to take much more relevance on the document side of things and the documentation, even the documentation of your software as well, potentially, and the way in which they're being sold, the guarantees that they get, the uptime, and of course, data security, data hosting, all sorts of certifications that you may have. That's what they care about. Is this a trustworthy company and organization? Which is a totally different ballgame, but it's still highly relevant, of course, in order to close enterprise deals. So that's that as far as procurement. It just becomes a slightly different sales cycle and a slightly different sales process for you as a founder / kind of serving as an account executive here. The next stage then also becomes stepping out of that one sales motion that you built that is scalable. So you just keep refining this until you get to a point where it's very scalable and you can hire an account executive to take care of this. So you will probably just need an account executive and one or two SDRs, plus either a fractional digital marketer or an actual digital marketer in general, to then repeat that sales process the same way, but instead of procurement being reliant on you as a founder / management, the account executive can take care of that. Of course, the account executive could be somebody that at earlier stage has been an SDR, or it can be somebody that you hire from a competitor or from like a product role, who has context about the product and who can sell it effectively and who can build trust with prospects, who is knowledgeable about the subject. So pretty much a subject matter expert, right? Can also be a director, to be fair. So can even be somebody from a client services team. But generally, it's good practice to hire account executives or sales engineers in case you are in a very technical business as well. But you as a founder want to step out of it. Why do you want to step out of it? Because you now have procurement to worry about. You have certifications you need to get. You have teams to build even on product and service delivery side. So you already have so much going on. You don't also want to be worried about sales if you have already hired 3 salespeople. So one needs to be senior, one or two can be a bit more junior, media, and of course, our digital marketer has been hopefully sticking with you throughout this entire process if you do it well. But this can also be an agency, similar with the SDRs to be fair, but that's another side point. This is one sales motion you then have created. What do I mean by a sales motion? It's a repeatable sales system that can pretty much run campaigns by itself without you necessarily being involved, unless, except maybe the last 5% of a deal. The reason that that matters, or the reason that that is the case, is a lot of markets have different sales motions. Some markets are faster in how fast pipeline should close, because if you're slow as a sales team, they could already go with a competitor. That's what happens in SMB, and that's what happens in fast to sell solutions if you're just selling SaaS only, for example. There's also very slow and procurement heavy motions. Say you're selling to government. See, some have less urgency, some have more time pressure, some have less time pressure. It kind of depends on what your market looks like and what verticals you're operating in. And another very important thing is, are you operating in like B2B or in B2G? So are you selling government? Are you selling semi-government? Are you selling business? Those are usually very different sales motions, but also across industries can be a very different sales motion. So the moment you figure one out that is scalable and repeatable, you don't want to just keep inserting new industries, ideas, and verticals into that same funnel, into that same sales team, that same sales system. You want to create a separate new one so that the SDRs in that motion are focused on a different sales motion. This sounds maybe a little bit fuzzy or a bit fake, but one sales motion you figure out maybe is business to government, relatively slow, but it's working. There's only 200 government agencies you can sell to, 500, 1,000, whatever the number may be. If you have a particular amount of people in your team, you're already exhausting in a way that market to the point hiring more SDRs is not going to be beneficial because it's just going to piss the market off. So there's always, in most cases, you can do more than you think here, but there is of course a ceiling. You can't just hire 10 SDRs to take care of 50 accounts. It's like, technically you can actually, but there is a ceiling. Let me put it that way. I won't put any numbers on it, but there is a ceiling as to how much execution you can do on each account before you just become the most annoying player in the market, which you don't want to do. So there's that. And instead of then scaling that motion by just adding a totally different motion, which is totally different accounts, totally, or at least very significantly different sales process, significantly different use cases that they care about, significantly different marketing. You don't just add that to that same team that is meant to be taking care of one vertical that is then just going to get distracted by a new vertical or a new use case or a new product. You then just create a new sales team, a new sales motion, a new marketing motion for that product, use case, vertical, motion, whatever it may be, or industry. And then it can be B2B or B2G. The way you split this, there's many ways to do it. I think if you look at the big firms, many firms split this by team/industry/vertical, but it's very valid to say B2B and B2G first. And then the moment you can go to 3 or 4, let's say, you might start to think about verticals, think about it differently. The most important thing there being that the SDRs and the digital marketer and the account executive all understand the context of what's living and what's important in that market. Because the more depth of understanding that they have, the better everything that they will do will convert. Hence why it's good to keep focus and to not add more vertical ideas and such into one motion. That said, another way you can do this is just fractionally applying SDRs to top of funnel for multiple sales motions. You can technically do that. Not necessarily anything wrong with that. It's just that ultimately, if you're going to convert the deal, you want everything to be predictable. So if you give one top of funnel both 50K and 500K level deal size leads, it no longer becomes predictable, especially if you do that across 2 sales pods. The moment you split it and you have one sales pod that is 50K level deals and you have one that is 500K level deals, it's like, okay, we just have 2 pipelines that we're working pretty much. And it becomes much more predictable because both these teams know what to do. One knows, okay, we just need to add a lot of pipeline in here. We are currently working 20 accounts. We can easily do 200. Then, okay, easy. They know what to do. Other one might be thinking, oh, we already are operating in a very high ACV, annual contract value market. We have our entire pipeline full. We actually have our calendars full already. We don't really need to do too much top of funnel execution and should focus more on engaging buying committees, moving deals forward. That's why this is important. A lot of people also segment by industry, a lot of people segment by B2B, B2G, a lot of people segment by many different ways. Each of them is valid. Each way in which you build these sales teams, whether you do like fractional SDRs and marketers or even fractional account executives, can be valid. It really just depends on your organization. It's just a matter of mixing and matching it to an extent that works well within the organization, that allows for both the account executive and the top of funnel SDRs plus marketer to perform at their maximum capability. So that's how to build and scale enterprise sales teams. I'm currently at a stage where I'm here, trying to get to here. That will take a relatively short while, but relatively long while. I don't really know what you expect a long or short while to be, but we'll see. I know that this is the right step forward because this is simply how organizations grow, and these are the steps that come in between. I hope this has been a valuable video. In case you do want to learn more about how we support, we kind of sit at the top of the funnel for our clients, as I said previously. So we support with this and this particularly, but we also have supported with marketing and qualifying leads, building authority in the market. If you want to have more depth, more context on what we do and how we do it, feel free to go to our website. For one, we have a lot of resources there like this one. We also have a lot of case studies there, depth on what we offer. And of course, you can book in a call with me in case you like to figure out exactly if this is a fit for your business. I hope this has been a useful video. In case so, subscribe, leave a like, do whatever you want to do, follow us on LinkedIn, and see you in another video. Appreciate it.